This young mother thought she was heading out for a relaxing weekend with her best friend in Croatia. But after one wild night at the club, she wakes up to find her friend missing, with her unable to recall any memory of what had happened the previous night. But as she starts to desperately search for the truth, she soon begins to uncover a shocking secret, one that leads straight back to her own husband.
You've reached Rob. Leave me a message after the text.
As the movie begins, we are introduced to Beth, a young mother who has just arrived in Croatia for a weekend getaway with her friend. She strikes up a chat with the friendly driver named Zane as the two talk through the entire trip, and as she arrives at her destination, Zane gives her his card in case she needs a ride again. Beth eventually arrives at the apartment, where she is greeted by her best friend Kate, who had planned and paid for the entire trip. As the two catch up, Beth gives her a necklace gift, but as Kate wears it, one of the onyx beads suddenly falls off. However, Kate brushes it off, as she tells her not to worry about it and that she appreciates the gift. Later that evening, Beth video calls her husband Rob and their baby Aster, as Rob encourages her to have fun, and later at dinner, as the two women talk, their conversation shifts to Kate's recent breakup with Jay as she tells Beth that since he hasn't removed her from his credit card yet, she's been using it to her satisfaction as she even orders expensive food just to get back at him. However, Beth admits her own marriage isn't going well, and that it's been over a year since things felt normal between her and Rob. But when Kate suggests getting a divorce, Beth tells her that she believes that it's just a rough patch for them. Not long after, Beth notices Kate angrily talking on the phone, as it turns out Jay has found out about the charges. But even at this, Kate convinces Beth to go clubbing after their meal, and while Kate is applying her makeup inside the cab, Beth talks with Zane as she eventually learns that he's a refugee from Syria. By the time they eventually arrive at the club, they meet two men, and Kate immediately pushes Beth to loosen up and enjoy herself, even suggesting a one-night stand. However, Beth hesitates, as she reminds her friend that she's married, but Kate insists no one has to know. They soon start to drink, and things eventually go out of control. By the next morning, Beth wakes up disoriented and barely remembering the night before. The room is messy with wine glasses and protection scattered around, which were clear signs the men were there last night. But Kate is nowhere to be found. When Beth tries calling her, there's no answer. This made her worried, so she video calls Rob, who tells her that he assumes Kate probably just went out shopping. Still uneasy, Beth checks with the landlord Sebastian, but he tells her that he hasn't seen her. Instead, he tells Beth that there would be extra charges for bringing guests over last night. Now left with no leads, Beth reports Kate missing to the tourist police. But Officer Povich seems skeptical, as he tells Beth that he suspects that Kate may have gone out with the men. However, Beth still feels unsettled, and she eventually asks Zane to take her back to the club. There, she questions the bartender, but he's unhelpful until Zane steps in more firmly, and they finally learn the truth that the two men from the night before are actually escorts who regularly visit the bar. That's when she remembers how Kate had been insisting on having fun with the men, as she starts to think that Kate must have hired them. When Rob later calls again, Beth tells him she's staying longer because she needs to find Kate first. The next morning, when Beth scrolls through the bar's Instagram, she spots a photo of the two escorts and she immediately shows it to Zane. Together, they come up with a plan to book the men for a fake private party. And as they wait, Beth and Zane begin to talk more, slowly getting to know each other. Moments later, the two men arrive. But the second they see Beth, they panic and try to run. Zane quickly chases after them and manages to catch one. And while under pressure, the man finally reveals the truth that they didn't stay long in the house, and that they stole Kate's bag and pawned it. With Zane's help, Beth eventually tracks down the pawn shop and retrieves the bag and phone. But still, something doesn't feel right, and she remains suspicious of the escorts. As Zane drops her off at the station, he pleads with Beth not to mention his involvement, as he fears it could affect his visa. And by the time Beth meets another officer named Kovac, they immediately notice that Officer Povich had not filed the missing report since yesterday. However, he simply brushes it off, as he tells them that he assumed Kate was just out partying. That is when Beth tells Kovac that the escorts should be questioned, as she is convinced that they know more than they're saying. And after leaving, Beth tries another lead, as she calls Kate's ex-husband Jay, only for him to claim that they haven't spoken in weeks, and when Beth brings up the argument about the credit card, Jay says he knows nothing about it. Later, when she gets back to the house, the landlord reminds Beth that it's checkout time. But when she tells him that she will still be staying back to find Kate, he offers her the spare room downstairs. That evening, Beth tries to unlock Kate's phone, but she fails, and by the time she goes upstairs to get water, Sebastian invites her to dinner, but she declines. Instead, she gets a call from Zane, who is waiting for her outside and offers to take her out for a meal. But before they could leave, Rob suddenly arrives and catches them off guard. So Beth tries to explain that Zane has only been helping her as she tells Rob everything, including the escorts. But before they can process the whole situation, they receive a call that Kate's body has been found. At the morgue, Beth is told that Kate had drowned, and for the time being, it's unclear whether it was an accident or something more. The next morning, we see that Rob is visibly shaken as he admits that he couldn't sleep after seeing Kate's body and suggests they return to London. But Beth refuses because she wants to stay until the autopsy is complete. Later that day, Povich eventually confirms Beth's fears that Kate was murdered. Wanting closure, Beth asks to see her friend one last time. And when the officer steps out, she takes Kate's phone and uses her face to unlock it. Then, she excuses herself to the restroom when she discovers repeated calls to a contact named Handyman on Kate's phone. In her curiosity, Beth calls the number and to her shock, the call goes directly to Rob's voicemail. That is when everything suddenly falls into place. And to confirm, Beth checks the messages and sees everything, that her husband and her best friend were having an affair. And based on their recent texts, she sees that Kate was planning to confess everything to her. But when she returns to the station, Kovac reveals that traces of an illegal substance were found in both Beth and Kate's systems. That is when Beth realizes that she may have been drugged that night. However, Kovac tells her that the escorts had denied any involvement, and that they have solid alibis. Also, witnesses from the club claim the two women were arguing. But with her memory still unclear, Beth insists it wasn't serious. But even so, the police begin to suspect her. And just like that, Beth's passport is confiscated as the investigation tightens around her. When Beth eventually meets with Zane again, she opens up about everything. About the affair, and that is when she begins to piece together a theory as she starts to believe that Kate may have drugged her that night, hoping Beth would make a mistake so Rob would leave her. But then, Zane raises another possibility as he asks if Rob could have killed Kate. But Beth quickly dismisses it, insisting Rob was in London when she spoke to him. That night, Rob calls Beth, and she eventually confronts him as she tells him that she knows about the affair. Although he initially denies the claims, when Beth tells him that she saw the texts, he starts to apologize and urge her to come home so they can fix things. But Beth refuses as she tells him that with the police already treating her as a suspect and holding her passport, she has no choice but to stay back. By the next morning, things escalate as the police arrive and arrest Beth. At the station, they show her a photo of her talking with Zane. It turns out Zane is linked to a criminal gang, and Povich quickly builds a theory that Zane killed Kate, and Beth hired him out of jealousy after discovering Rob's affair. Beth denies everything and immediately demands a lawyer. And for the moment, she's released. By the time she arrives back at the apartment, she finds Zane waiting. That is when he explains that he was also arrested but released after proving he was working that night through his taxi app. When Beth questions his connection to the gang, Zane reveals that while he was still in Syria during the war, he once saved a boy who turned out to be the son of a gang member. That connection had helped him escape Syria, as he insists he was never part of their operations. Still, something doesn't add up. And after he leaves, Beth suddenly starts to wonder how the police knew about the affair. She remembers confronting Rob on the phone while standing near the room mirror, as she immediately becomes suspicious. And when she checks the mirror, she eventually discovers that there is a hidden camera and that the room is wired. She immediately goes upstairs where she meets Sebastian, and while he's distracted, she secretly takes his key. After he leaves, she unlocks his hidden studio and inside, she finds screens and recordings that reveal that Sebastian has been secretly filming all the rooms. By the time Beth searches through the footage from that night, she finds that after she had passed out, Kate and the two men had taken her to the bedroom and left her on the bed before they continued partying by the pool. However, the men soon returned to steal Kate's expensive bag and ran off. When Kate realized this, she rushed out and took a cab to chase them, and Beth noted the license plate. About an hour later, Kate appears again. But this time, she steps out of a different car and Beth notices that there's a sticker on the vehicle. But before she could move forward, Sebastian returns, and just as he enters the room, Beth slams the door into him, knocking him back. And even when he tries to explain, Beth is furious, as she accuses him of knowing everything all along. Just then, Sebastian quickly deletes the footage from his phone before Beth grabs it, and in the chaos, he falls and loses consciousness. So Beth quickly takes the keys and escapes as she meets up with Zane, and together they head to the taxi company. There, they track down the driver who took Kate that night, and he tells them that when he and Kate couldn't find the men that night, he had dropped Kate off at the police station. And that's when it hits Beth. If Kate went to the station, why was there no report? Then she recalls how Povich also failed to file her missing person report. Just then, Beth's photo appears on the TV as a wanted person, and moments later, the police arrive, forcing her and Zane to run. But before they escape, Beth suddenly notices that the sticker on Povich's car is the exact same one she saw on the vehicle that dropped Kate off that night. The two eventually run as Beth finally tells Zane about her realization, as she's convinced now that Povich is the one who killed Kate. And with no time to waste, Zane makes a decision to surrender himself to the police, to give Beth a chance to escape. However, Povich spots her and gives chase, following her all the way to the top of a building. When she is eventually cornered, Beth decides to confront Povich as she accuses him of Kate's murder. However, he expresses initial shock as they argue. But just then, Kovac arrives, and in the chaos, Povich loses his footing and falls down the building, ending his pursuit for good. Back at the station, the truth begins to unfold as Kovac explains they were able to recover footage from Sebastian's hidden cameras, and that the video shows Povich dropping Kate off that night. And from there, Kovac believes he had tried to make a move on her, and when rejected, he killed her. She apologizes to Beth for wrongly suspecting her as she shows her footage of a man, believed to be Povich, pushing Kate into the sea. Kovac also tells her that the escorts were the ones who drugged both Beth and Kate. She mentions that it is all part of their scheme as they target women who hire them, then rob them while they're unaware. With the case seemingly solved, Kovac returns Beth's passport. And by the time she gets outside, Beth thanks Zane for everything and returns to London. Time passes, and we see that the two are still in touch while Beth puts distance between herself and Rob. And one day, as she drops off their baby at his place, Rob tries to reconcile only for her to refuse. By the time she's about to leave and she asks for her car keys, Rob tells her it's in his jacket. But to her shock, when Beth checks the pocket, she finds a small onyx bead. It was identical to the one that fell off the necklace she had given to Kate. That is when the entire story finally clicks as Beth steps into the bathroom and quietly calls Kovac. However, before she can explain, Rob interrupts, forcing her to hide the phone. Immediately, Beth steps outside. She accuses him directly as she starts to piece everything together, that Croatia is only a short flight away and that Rob could have gone there that night. At first, Rob denies everything, but when Beth shows him the bead, he eventually breaks. He finally admits as he tells her that he had met Kate shortly after Povich dropped her off. And when Kate said she regretted their affair and that she might confess, things went out of control. And in the heat of the moment, he had lashed out, causing her to fall and hit her head before slipping into the water. He confessed that he believed that she was dead, so he had panicked and fled the scene. Now desperate, Rob begs Beth not to go to the police, claiming the case is already closed. However, he discovers that it's already too late as Beth reveals that she's been on the phone with Kovac the entire time. When reality fully dawns on him, Rob tries to stop her from leaving, but Beth manages to fight back and escape with her baby. And in the closing scenes, we see her leaving, as sirens approach Rob's apartment in the background, as we see that the truth has finally caught up with him.